So, what are the three steps in localization of stroke? First is clinical localization of the site of the lesion. Like you have to localize clinically whether it is left sided stroke, right sided stroke, whether it is involving anterior circulation or is involving posterior circulation. Then second is identify the vascular territory, which artery you are suspecting, which area you are suspecting, like ACA, MCA, or ICA territory or PCA, and then correlate with these two with the imaging finding. So, what are the prerequisites for clinical localization? First, you should understand the basic functional anatomy of the brain, and second, the blood supply of the different part of the brain. So coming to the functional anatomy, as you know, brain is divided into different lobes and cerebellum and brainstem. So the largest part of the brain is the frontal lobe. What's our function? Its function are executive function, thinking, planning, organizing uh, things, problem solving, emotional, behavior control, and personality. And so any patient coming with a stroke in the frontal lobe may sometimes look like a psychiatric patient. He may be disinhibited, irrelevant talk, and sometimes we may level these kind of patient to the convergent disorder also. And the second part of the posterior part of the frontal lobe is motor cortex. This is motor area. And if the stroke in all of this area, patient will present with the weakness. And then there is central sulcus, and posterior it is the somatosensory cortex. And this area will give rise to sensory complaint. There may be positive sensory complaint or negative sensory complaints. And behind it is the other part of the parietal lobe, which function of this part of parietal lobe is right left orientation, visual-spatial orientation, reading, helping in reading, writing, drawing, calculation, and body part awareness. And behind it is the occipital lobe, which you all know that it deal with the vision. And then there is temporal lobe, which deals with the temporal memory and language. And behind it is cerebellum, which control the balance. And then there is brain stem, which has three parts: midbrain, bones, and medulla. And it has a cranial nerve except first and second, and then reticular activating system. So it is a gross functional anatomy of the brain. You should be aware about this. Then coming to the blood supply, you all know that brain has two major vessels. One is the internal carotid artery, another is vertebral artery. This is the internal carotid artery, and it gives rise to two branches: MCA, this is MCA, and this is ACA, anterior cerebral artery and middle cerebral artery. And then there are two vertebral arteries. These are two vertebral arteries. They join to form the basilar artery, and then they further again divide to give the paired posterior cerebral artery. And these arteries make the circle of Willis, which is the main blood supply to the brain. So in the neuroimaging, you should be able to identify these major blood vessels. This is ICA. This is going the ICA, and then this ICA bifurcate into two vessels. This is ACA and this is MCA. Okay. And then another is this is vertebral artery going up, joining to form the single basilar artery, and then it again divided into two parts, that is basilar artery. And in another image, you can clearly see this is a vertebral artery between the spinal process. This is a vertebral artery going inside. So you should be able to make out the major vessel at least. And coming to the then blood supply of the brain, this is the lateral view of the brain. Uh, so this superior part of the frontal lobe and parietal lobe is supplied by the anterior cerebral artery. And then rest of the part of the frontal and parietal and temporal lobe is supplied by the middle cerebral artery. And then rest of the part, that is posterior part of the parietal lobe, occipital lobe, and inferior and posterior part of the temporal lobe is supplied by the posterior cerebral artery. If we see from the middle side of the brain, one hemisphere, this area of middle area of the frontal parietal lobe is supplied by the anterior cerebral artery, and then middle part of the parietal lobe, occipital lobe, and temporal lobe supplied by the posterior cerebral artery, and then anterior part of the temporal lobe supplied by the middle cerebral artery. And this is inferior, the same anterior cerebral artery medially, laterally MCA, and posteriorly this is PCA. So you should have an idea about these territories. And if you see the axial section, again, this area, frontal lobe and parietal lobe, medial part, this area, blue area, supplied by the anterior cerebral artery, then rest of the frontal and parietal lobe supplied by the MCA, and then occipital lobe and medial temporal lobe supplied by the PCA. And this is coronal section, again, medial area supplied by the ACA, rest of the area, lateral part of the frontal, temporal, and parietal lobe supplied by the MCA, and then inferior part by the PCA. And you should be aware about this homunculus, both sensory and motor homunculus. Anteriorly, this strip is about motor homunculus. So if you take the coronal section, medially, middle area of the brain, this is represented by the lower limbs. So any stroke in this area means ACA territory will give rise to the symptom of the lower limb symptom, like weakness in the lower limb. And if there is a sensory area is involved, it will give rise to the sensory complaint in the lower limb. While this area, all the rest area, upper limb, trunk, face, mouth, this usually supplied by the MCA territory, and infarction in this area will give rise to complaints in the upper limb, trunk, like weakness of the upper limb, facial weakness, truncal weakness. Similarly, goes for sensory cortex also. ACA territory will supply the lower limb, and rest of the part will be supplied by the MCA territory. And coming to the posterior circulation, as I told you, there are 3 arteries. When there are paired posterior cerebral artery, which supply the midbrain. Then second part is the pons, which is supplied by the basilar artery, and medulla, which is supplied by the paired vertebral artery. And then cerebellum. Cerebellum is mainly supplied by 3 arteries: superior cerebellar artery, ICA, and PICA. Anterior inferior cerebral artery, posterior inferior cerebellar artery. Superior cerebellar and ICA arise from the basilar artery, and PICA arise from the vertebral artery. So any lesion in the basilar artery or vertebral artery will give rise to symptom of the pons or medulla, along with the cerebellar infarction, and posterior cerebral artery will involve the area of midbrain and also the occipital and medial temporal lobe. How to define the stroke? Stroke is defined as a neurological deficit which is due to acute focal injury to the CNS due to a vascular cause. As we all know, we can divide into two types: ischemic and hemorrhagic, and subauricular hemorrhage. So once you encounter a patient with the acute neurological deficit, what differential you should consider apart from a stroke? So in the stroke disease, the common differential are seizures. They count around 17%. Then other common differential are systemic infection, brain tumor, toxic metabolic disorder. Common in our emergency are hyponatremia and hypoglycemia, and then positional vertigo and sometimes convergent disorder may present like a stroke, like a picture. So how to differentiate between stroke and these other differential? First, coming to the hypoglycemia. Hypoglycemia is common in pediatric age population and alcoholic and diabetic. Around 5% of patients who present with neuroglycopenia may present like an acute stroke picture, like hemiplegia and or aphasia. So how to differentiate clinically? Usually patient will present with apart from this stroke-like picture, patient may have autonomic disturbance, altered sensorium, or seizures. If these symptoms along with the stroke-like picture, you should consider hypoglycemia or other metabolic insult. And what you find in imaging may be absolutely normal, or there may be slight edema of diffuse cerebral edema. Like in this picture, you can say there are no sulci are visible, there are mild hypodensity of the white matter. So it may present with normal CT scan or diffuse cerebral edema. And what you find in the MRIs, they may give you a clue. So in the T2 images, you will find sulcal effacement. You can see these are clear visible sulcus, but in posterior part, sulcal are blurred bilaterally. And along with this, there will be hyperintensity of this area around cortical and subcortical area. And if you see a FLAIR image of neuroglycopenia patient, you will find cortical as well as subcortical hyperdensity. And if you do the diffusion images and ADC images, which we usually do for stroke patient, you will find cortical and subcortical diffusion restriction, and similar area will show hypodensity during the ADC map. So how do you differentiate between stroke and these patients? There are two important differential features in neuroimaging, especially in MRI. First, in hypoglycemia, lesions are bilateral. And second, these lesions don't follow a single vascular territory. Like in these MRI, you can see this area is supplied by PCA, this is supplied by MC, and this is supplied by AC. So it's involving all three territories. This is not possible in stroke. So stroke will usually involve one vascular territory. And secondary, these are bilateral. Stroke usually are not bilateral. So this is clue. And another differential is seizure and post-ictal state. Sometimes patient may present with seizure, maybe pure focal seizure like motor seizure or generalized seizure followed by weakness, and followed by weakness of one part of the body like hemiplegia. So these weakness usually last for hours or days, 1 to 2 days, maximum 2 days, and they spontaneous recovery if we control the seizure properly. So how to differentiate between this post-ictal seizure and TIA or stroke? So what you find in TIA, usually there is no loss of consciousness. In Todd's palsy or post-ictal paresis, we may find loss of consciousness after seizure, and then patient may awake and develop hemiplegia. And in history, we may find found stroke risk factor, while in the post-ictal paresis, patient may have past history of seizure or head trauma or neoplasm. Usually TIA lasts around half an hour to 1 hour or maximum 24 hours. And but the stroke, there may be permanent deficit. While in the post-ictal paresis, what happened? Patient may have aura, then seizure for 1 to 2 minutes, and then post-ictal palsy for 1 to 2 days maximum. And in stroke, what are the features? The palsy weakness features, like they are negative symptoms, like patient will have weakness, patient will have sensory loss. And while in the post-ictal paresis, patient will have positive symptoms in seizures, like patient may have abnormal tingling sensation in half of the body, tonic posturing of the body during the seizure. And how do you diagnose? As TIA or stroke, we can diagnose with the neuroimaging like CT or MRI. While in the Todd's palsy, we may find sometime intraictal discharge during EEG, but there is no definitive diagnostic test for Todd's palsy. It is a clinical diagnosis. So, and coming to another differential, common differential, that is space occupying lesion. That is, how do they present? They present usually subacute or chronic onset of symptoms, but sometimes patient may present acutely, like a patient who have some space occupying lesion, malignancy in the brain, and that has bled into the brain, and patient may have acute focal deficit. And but what are the other associated feature in space occupying lesion along with this focal deficit? Patient may have severe headache, deep bursting headache, projectile vomiting due to raised ICT, or patient may have seizures along with the stroke-like pictures. And another common differential is migraine, especially the atypical variant of migraine like hemiplegic migraine, where patient may develop some aura of visual aura, then patient may develop headache along with the neurological deficit like hemiplegia. Then retinal migraine may mimic amaurosis. Patient may have headache along with the transient loss of vision. And third one is ophthalmoplegic migraine, like patient may have headache along with the ophthalmoplegia. Patient may have involvement of third, fourth, sixth cranial nerve. Patient may present headache with ptosis and miosis. We should be able to differentiate migraine from the stroke, especially the atypical migraine. How do you differentiate? What are the common differentiating features? Like in TIA or stroke, I told negative symptom, there will be weakness, there will be sensory loss. While in migraine, there may be aura of positive symptoms, like patient may flickering images around in the his visual field. There are no negative symptom, and patient in TIA or stroke usually present with all the symptoms will come at once. They will not come one by one. While in the migraine, patient may have aura which may last for half an hour, then patient may develop some neurological deficit along with the headache, like lower limb weakness, one-sided lower limb monoparesis, then patient over time may develop hemiparesis. So they sum up one by one. And in TIA, I said that patient may have half an hour, 1 hour duration, or maximum 24-hour duration, while in stroke, there will be permanent deficit. while in the migrainous aura, the patient may improve in with the subsidence of headache. If you treat the headache, sometimes patient may improve immediately. And TI and stroke usually age is around older age, and a migraine patient usually a young patient who's present with neurological deficit. So once you have discussed the how to differentiate between different kind of strokes, like ischemic stroke. There are two types of ischemic. One is thrombotic, one is embolic. So what are the features of thrombotic stroke? Thrombotic stroke may present with acute onset, maximum deficit at present, or patient may present with stuttering progression, like patient will develop some weakness, then plateau, then again weakness, then plateau, or like this only. And usually these weakness are present in one vascular territory, like ACA, MC, or PCA. While in embolic stroke, patient will maximum deficit will be at the onset. Patient will suddenly go down, and then it will be static, not like stuttering course. And that deficit will be in only one territory. And ICH patient usually present with gradual onset, slowly worsening over hours or 1 or 2 hours or days or minutes. And sometimes patient may present acutely in ICH also. And usually the focal signs will not follow the one vascular territory. And fourth is subarachnoid hemorrhage. The cardinal feature is thunderclap headache, severe headache, knuckle rigidity, and minimal focal deficit. Patient will come with only headache. Sometimes there may be some weakness, or sometimes patient may not any weakness, just headache, severe thunderclap headache. Then if we look for risk factor for thrombotic and embolic, we'll find the same atherosclerotic risk factor. While in the embolic, we can also find embolic risk factor like rheumatic heart disease, DCMP, or arrhythmias, different kind of arrhythmia. While in ICH, most common is you will usually find is hypertension, or sometimes there may be trauma, bleeding disease, use of anticoagulation, poorly monitored INR, illicit drugs which raise your blood pressure like amphetamine or cocaine, or vascular malformation. And subarachnoid hemorrhage, patient may have history of hypertension, alcohol use, or smoking. And in clinical examination, we will find some clue like ischemic thrombotic stroke, patient may have carotid artery stenosis, and we may find the neck bruise. While in embolic, patient may sometimes give history of sudden coughing or sneezing and then focal neurology deficit, while in ICH may be precipitated by physical activity, or subarachnoid hemorrhage may be precipitated by physical activities. So, how do we examine take history of these kind of patient? So first, we should always inquire about the onset. Exact onset is very important, not only for diagnosis but also for the management of the patient, in especially stroke patient. We should ask for the exact onset and whether there is any progression or the symptom are static. Then we will also ask previous history of any stroke, TIAs of or amaurosis. Then we should take the history of hypertension, diabetes, or other risk factor like arrhythmias, diabetic cardiomyopathy, rheumatic heart disease, prosthetic valve. We should take history of seizure and migraine. As I told you, these are common differential history of anticoagulation therapy and monitoring of INR. Whether there is any history of other drugs like oral contraceptive drugs, or history of hypercoagulable disorder like sickle cell anemia or polycythemia vera, or substance abuse like cocaine or amphetamine. And examination, we should do the proper neurologic examination of all the stroke patient, but their examination may variable, because sometimes patient during examination may develop new symptom, or sometimes patient with TIA examining patient may improve. And also that examination also depend on the site of the vascular lesion, because their anterior circulation a different symptom, posterior circulation stroke a different symptom. So, but we should properly examine a patient. We can may get a very good clue about the diagnosis. And then we should system examination also important, like we should examine the skin for any evidence of gentile asthma, rashes for vasculitis, any evidence of limb ischemia, which may give as our indicate we can which can give a clue about the peripheral vascular disease or DVT. We should also look the eye for look for any changes of diabetes, hypertensive, or retinal emboli. So after examination, we can broadly divide the stroke syndrome into two categories, large vessel and small vessel. Then large vessel can further divided into anterior circulation or posterior circulation. So what are the stroke with anterior circulation, how they present? So we all know anterior circulation mean either internal carotid artery or its branches, MCA or ACA. So how these different kind of stroke syndrome present? So first coming to the middle cerebral artery infarction. Middle cerebral artery, there is stem and then there are two divisions, superior and inferior division. So if there is clot in the superior division, what will be the presentation? Patient will present contralateral hemiplegia because it supply the motor cortex. So the patient will present with the contralateral hemiplegia. Face and upper limb will be involved more than the lower limb because lower limb area is involved supplied by the ACA, and patient will have similarly contralateral hemisensory loss that again in upper limb, more upper limb and trunk will be involved more. Then patient may have conjugate gaze palsy. Patient will look toward the side of the lesion, and then if there is Broca's area, speech area is involved, patient may have Broca's aphasia. This is MRI showing the superior thrombus in the superior branch of the MCA. And if there is involvement of MCA inferior branch, what will the symptom? Because inferior branch supply the temporal lobe. So patient may have contralateral hemianopia or sometimes even quadrinopia or Wernicke's dysphasia because the Wernicke's area is also involved. And if parietal lobe is involved, then patient may have spatial neglect. So, and if the stem of the MCA is involved, like both MCA and superior and inferior division will be involved. So, what will the symptom? Contralateral hemiplegia, contralateral hemisensory, so both upper and lower limb, and then contralateral gaze palsy, contralateral hemianopia, and then global dysphasia if there is dominant lobe is involved, or the patient may also anosognosia and ultrasensorium if ultrasensorium due to, because if there is infarction is large, there will be edema, there is compression of the involvement of reticular activating system or involvement compression of the brainstem. So patient may also develop ultrasensorium. So, and then another branch is MCA is lenticulostriatal artery, which involve the basal ganglia, which supply the basal ganglia and internal capsule. So patient will present with contralateral hemiparesis. There will be dense hemiplegia, small lesion but with marked weakness. Similarly, contralateral sensory loss due to involvement of sensory limb of the internal capsule, and then there may be transcortical aphasia because fiber from the Wernicke's area to Broca's area transfer through these areas. So they may also involve patient may have transcortical aphasia. So this is the MRI again showing the same syndrome, MCA superior division involvement, MCA inferior division involvement, and MCA stem involvement. You can see only ACA and PCA territory are spared and the rest all is involved. And then anterior cerebral artery infarction, how they present? As I told you, they involve the. Please mute yourself. Someone is speaking. So, in anterior cerebral artery infarction, because it involves the frontal and parietal lobe, so and middle area. So lower limb area is involved. So patient will be weakness, marked weakness of leg, but their leg and foot, while mild weakness of upper limb and trunk. And there will be cortical sensory loss over the legs similarly. And then there may be presence of primitive reflex like pout reflex, snout reflex, or palmomental reflex. And this area also constitutes the urinary fiber. So there may be urinary incontinence. And this area also has gait fiber. So patient may have difficulty in walking and gait apraxia. You can see this is ACA territory infarction. This is again CT scan showing the infarction in the ACA territory. You can see this hypodensity in the middle area of the frontal and parietal lobe. So how the internal carotid artery infarction present? Clinical feature may vary because there may be, if there is chronic atherosclerotic changes, patient may develop collateral around the ICA, and then there may be complete occlusion of ICA, but patient may not have that much of neurological deficits. And then it also clinical picture depend whether it is embolism, extension of thrombus, or low flow. So patient may present with the syndrome of MCA or ACA territory infarction either alone or in a combination of both ACA and MC. Sometimes patient may develop with watershed infarction in low flow stages or amylosis fugose. That's the small emboli migrate to the ophthalmic artery and patient may loss of vision. So this is the CT scan showing ACA and MCA combined infarction. You can see ACA territory is involved, MCA territory involved, and only PCA territory is spared. So this is combined ACA-MCA infarction due to IC thrombosis. And what are the watershed infarction? There are some area which are watershed in the brain, like transition zone between ACA and MCA transfuse area and MCA and PCA transfuse territory, and then between the cortical branches and deep penetrating branches. So if patient has low flow, patient may develop wedge-shaped infarction in watershed area, bilateral or unilateral. This is the watershed infarction in the MCA and PCA territory in the parieto-occipital area, and this is deep-seated watershed infarction due to low flow of the ICA. So coming to the posterior circulation, you should remember there are four important structures in posterior circulation. One is reticular activity system, which is important for maintaining consciousness. Then cerebellum, that is for balance. Then multiple cranial nerve, and then there are tracts, ascending and descending tracts. So posterior circulation stroke will present with combination or alone of these four structures. So patient may have cranial nerve involvement in the form of diplopia in posterior circulation, dysarthria, or facial numbness or facial weakness due to multiple cranial nerve involvement. It depends on the which part of the brainstem is involved. Then patient may have hemiparesis or hemisensory loss due to ascending or descending tract in the brainstem. Then patient may develop hemianopia due to occipital lobe involvement. If there is cerebellum involvement, patient will develop ataxia, vertigo, or vomiting. Or patient may develop loss of consciousness if reticular activating system in the brainstem is involved. I will not go into the detail of various named syndrome in the posterior circulation, Weber, medial medullary, lateral medullary. I will give you a brief review. So this is four pictures of the posterior circulation. This is, you can see, right sided of cerebellum infarction. Wall of the, this is MRI image. This is showing T2 hyperintensity in one of hemisphere of the cerebellum. This is temporal lobe, and this is infarction in the medial temporal lobe due to PCA territory involvement. And this is pontine infarction, involvement of pons. You can see hyperintensity. And this is CT scan showing, it is not clear, hyperdense lesion in the basilar artery due to acute thrombus in the basilar artery. Sometimes we can diagnose thrombus in the major vessels due to dense sign. So that's for ischemic stroke. I will now go into detail of the various syndrome of the posterior circulation. So now coming to the ICH, it constitutes around 10 to 15% of all stroke cases. Symptom of ICH may begin abruptly. Usually they begin gradually, or sometimes they may begin abruptly, sudden onset like ischemic stroke. Common features of loss of consciousness is very common. Patient usually present with headache, and it is severe headache. And then common site of ICH are hypertensive, are putamen, internal capsule, thalamus, cerebellum, or pons, or sometimes there may be lobar bleed. CT scan and MRI are usually equally sensitive and specific for, but we should do CT scan if we are suspecting ICH because it is easy to do, less cumbersome, and less time consuming. So we can get a diagnosis early in the CT scan. But if MR, sometimes we need MRI because it helps in detecting the old hemorrhages. So what are the common etiology of ICH? Most common causes of ICH is hypertension in around 70 to 80%. Then in non-hypertensive ICH, there may be bleeding disorder or anticoagulation use, amyloid angiopathy, very common cause in elderly patient. Then vascular malformation, AVM, aneurysm, cavernous hemangioma. Usually these patients land up in neurosurgery. We don't see much of these patients. Then there may be ICH due to trauma, tumor, or drug abuse like amphetamine or cocaine. So what are the, this is slide again same showing common site of the hypertensive ICH. Most common site, as I told you, this is putamen and internal capsule. Then there is thalamus, lobar, cerebellum, or pons. So this is CT scan showing the various site of hypertensive ICH. In the first picture A, you can see the bleed, hyperintense lesion. This is bleed in the putamen, and in B, this is bleed in the thalamus. This is lobar bleed with intraventricular extension, and this is pontine bleed in the pons. This is cerebellum bleed, and this is bleed in the temporal lobe. So hypertensive bleed may present with various site of okay. Then another common cause of bleed, especially in the elderly patient, is amyloid angiopathy. It is very common in the elderly after the 60-year of age. So there are two main type of presentation. One is multiple simultaneous intracranial hemorrhage. Like in this slide, first picture, you can see these are special MRI sequence called SWI. They are done for to detect hemorrhages. So you can see multiple black dots. These all are hemorrhages, small hemorrhages, and two large thalamic bleeds. Or sometimes they may present single bleed, lobar bleed. So if you find multiple small bleed in old age patient with some with or without lobar bleed, you should suspect a myeloid angiopathy. So, and coming to bleeding diastasis, most consistent risk factor for bleeding diastasis related ICH is prolongation of INR. Usually hemorrhage develop incidentally, and they slowly progress over hours or sometimes over days. Patient may worsen over days, and as compared to ICH due to hypertension, these hematoma growth is more. These hematoma are larger and they have high mortality and morbidity. And if a patient who is on anticoagulation develop any neurological deficit and come to you in emergency, you should always consider anticoagulation related ICH unless otherwise proved and get urgent CT scan. And what is the cardinal feature? Sometimes you see level in the anticoagulation related bleed level. If you find level, you can show that there is some bleeding diastasis in the patient, maybe due to drug related, or sometimes CLD patient may also present this kind of bleeding. And so one slide about the ICH. Spontaneous ICH, we see in our emergency many cases of spontaneous ICH. Spontaneous ICH is most frequently the most common cause is aneurysmal rupture, because most of the blood vessels, major blood vessels like PCA, ICMCA, they travel in the subarachnoid space. So this aneurysm rupture and these bleed into subarachnoid space. And majority of these aneurysm occur around the circle of Philus. So when any there is aneurysmal bleed, we usually find it in the basal cistern or subarachnoid space in the sylvian fissure. And because blood is very irritant, when it's seep into the subarachnoid space, patient will have thunderclap headache. So what you see in the subarachnoid hemorrhage, these hyperintensity, you can see these are all hyperintensity. These are subarachnoid hemorrhage. This is a subarachnoid hemorrhage in the sylvian fissure. You can see this side subarachnoid, and another side is basal cistern, around the basal cistern. This is bleed. This is subarachnoid hemorrhage. So if you find this kind of picture, patient coming with thunderclap headache with minimal neurological deficit, severe agitated headache, knuckle rigidity, and this kind of picture, you should always order a urgent CT angiogram. And what you find in angiogram, you may find some aneurysm. Like in this slide, you can see this is MR angiogram showing PCOM aneurysm. This is DSA showing the similar PCOM aneurysm. This is reconstituted image, CT angio images. These are two large aneurysm in PCOM. So if a patient coming thunderclap headache with picture suggestive of SAH, you should always order an angiogram, preferably CT angiogram or MR angiogram. So how do you approach these any patient who come to the acute neurological deficit? You should take a history, examine a patient, and make your differential like TIA stroke, or if you're still suspecting some other stroke mimic. So you should say, so after proper history examination, vital examination, do a neurologic examination, do a ECG and sugar check, and then make your differential. If you able to make out this is stroke mimic like hypoglycemia or some toxic metabolic encephalopathy or some other insult, diagnose this stroke mimic and identify and manage. And if you're still suspecting that it is no, it is stroke, then you do urgent CT scan or MRI, whichever is available, preferably CT scan. And if you find SEH, monitor BP, other parameter, and evacuation if is indicated. And if you found this ischemic stroke, you can go for mechanical thrombectomy, thrombolysis, decompression, depend on the patient to patient, and monitor vitals. So this is all about the stroke overview. Any queries you can ask?
Sir, one question, sir.
Yes.
Sir, how can we differentiate that the ICH is due to hypertension or non-hypertensive bleed apart from atypical site, maybe clinically or by progression of the bleed?
Sometimes neuroimaging give you clue. Like I told you, hypertensive bleed, there are particular sites. Most common is putamen and all. But if there is like amyloid, you will find multiple small bleed or some lobar bleed. And in bleeding diastasis, you may sometimes multiple both side bleed and some fluid level, air and blood level, fluid level. So you can make out. It's not, and then you can take help of MRI. Sometimes MRI may show all hemorrhages, so you can small hemorrhages, microangiopathic changes, so you can make a diagnosis that it is hypertensive related bleed.
Okay, sir. So how can we differentiate cerebral small vessel disease versus amyloid angiopathy?
Small vessel, they usually present not that I show you the MRI. Na? This will diffuse. In amyloid, there is more diffuse, multiple small bleed, cortical, subcortical areas. Okay, and there may be lobar bleed, amyloid. While in small vessel, they are usually white matter disease, small white matter bleeds only. Cortex is less involved. And the amyloid, if a patient has amyloid angiopathy, there is more florid bleed. And in small vessel disease, sometimes you may find small ischemic lacune also, small ischemic lacune, some small bleed, both combination. While in amyloid, you will find only bleeds. So MRI will help you in differentiating these.
Yes, sir. Sir, how common is aneurysmal bleed without any presence of SAH or
Means aneurysmal bleed.
without the presence of SAH, like only ICH or
Rare. Actually, aneurysmal bleed mostly present with the SH. Sometimes we may present because some terminal branch which is just at the termination of the ACA or MCA, sometimes we may also get a lobar bleed, but usually not. Patient usually present with SH only.
okay, sir.
Yes, sometimes it's like AV malformation, or sometimes you may also get lobar bleed also. Anyone? Okay.